Hello, I'm Sojiro,
I'm Vadim.
and this is the podcast for Global Understanding GCD.
So, which global issue are you focusing on at the moment?
Well, I would like to focus on the topic of gender equality and women's rights. It has been discussed, but never drastically improved throughout the years. In certain cultures or religions, they tend to have a sort of belief system that they stick to. And in this podcast, I would like to talk about that.
You talk about religion and society and in a way upbringing and all that. As a man and like how you've been raised and how you've had experiences, why do you think gender equality is so important?
Well, I feel like people being able to voice their opinion or have their own beliefs is important on its own, and I wouldn't want gender to be a limiting factor for people to voice their opinions about or be themselves in this world.
What do you think are the main barriers between what our society is now and a gender equal society?
Could you elaborate on that a little bit?
For example, what can we do to improve gender equality within our society here in Japan or any other place?
Well, we it's not like we aren't doing anything about gender equality, and but as if now, I personally would think like, well, for example, in Afghanistan or any other country that follows the Islamic religion, has a belief system of gender norm. It has a strict gender norm, but it's hard for them to change their perspective of gender because it's their religion, and you can't really change a belief system. But I guess what they can I guess what they can start doing is respect the opposite gender. So, for example, respect the woman's opinion, or start taking into account like what women are trying to say. So instead of being housewives and being limited to doing or being limited to normal gender norms, women should be able to at least voice their opinion and have a little bit of freedom in the country.
You talk about the Taliban regime in Afghanistan, and you talk about specifically how women have been, in a way, abused due to this very strict following or interpretation of what Islamic religion is. Do you think there's any way you, as someone who does not live in Afghanistan or does not follow Islam, can help women's rights in Afghanistan, or can help in any way Afghan women to get more power?
Well, I feel like a more general perspective would be to raise awareness. And personally, I think I'm happy to raise awareness using different social media platforms and voice my opinion about women's rights. But at the end of the day, if it really, I personally don't think that would do much, because I'm obviously not from Afghanistan or the Middle Eastern country where they follow the Islamic religion, and I don't it's not like I have a lot of experience with it. So for me to voice opinions about Afghanistan and their religion is not it's not something that I can proudly do. but it, as a person, or as an individual, I can at least voice my opinion about gender norms and the religion and the rights they should hold.
Yeah, you talk about culture a lot, and do you think this seems to be in a way, a solution for women? I mean, because you also talk about Islamic states. There's a lot of Islamic states out there. Some of them are really rich. Some of them are really underdeveloped, like Afghanistan. And there's even underdeveloped countries that are not Islamic that have a very high women equality. For example, Rwanda and other countries. Do you think there's other than, for example, development, is there any other way to kind of combat gender inequality within society?
Well, I guess that all comes to the leader itself, the government. Changing how, if you employ women in a greater rate, that would tackle gender norms, or just by changing their perception of genders. I mean, yeah, if equal pay should also be one of them, but the religion also states that, Islam, I don't know, their culture is that, women should not work, and support their husbands for their life, but I guess what they can do is that women should hold a little bit more power in their individual state. So if they can have their own income system, and to be able to support themselves, if they don't have a husband, then I feel like that would be a success in developing or changing these gender norms.
So, yeah, you talk about religion being such a big hurdle in gender equality. A counter example would be, for example, Iran. Iran is also a country that has a lot of gender inequality, and this has sparked a generational civil war between the younger generation, who believe that the Islamic religion has nothing to do with gender equality, that there's a way to follow Islam and still be gender equal, whereas the older generation still follow these strict rules on what a woman is, how a woman is supposed to be in society, and all that. Do you think there's a way that, you talk about Islam being such a barrier, is there a way that people can still practice Islam while being gender equal?
Well, it really depends on how people grow up. As they grow up, they receive information, and when they're an adult, that information that they took in when they were young tends to become their norm. So generations really do matter. Younger generations has these new perception of gender equality, but older generations tend to have these thinking where, women should stay in the kitchen or provide for their husband, because they grew up with that norm, and they were influenced a lot with that. So the fact that a lot of younger generations are starting to change their perception and start to take in account of gender norms, equality, would change the whole perception of equal rights. And yeah,
being Japanese and living in Japan, a country that's not necessarily gender equal when compared to other countries, do you see any similarities to some degree between Japan and Iran or Afghanistan?
I mean, like Japan has its own perception of gender, and well, there's a lot of examples where, you know, say the medical university in Japan didn't accept female students, even though they had a score of from the entry exam. They were able to they were able to like go into the university, but instead of taking women, the officials decided to choose younger male students for their new student, even though they didn't fit the requirements or fulfill the requirements. So in that way, you know, Japan also had this whole gender norm back in the 1940s, 80s. They were quite similar to you know, how women didn't really have their voting rights, or they were housewives basically. But Japan started to change as younger generations started to have like different perspectives, and you know, it's a lot of people are taking into account about gender equality and rights. But yeah, I feel like you know, if we keep on talking about this and keep on raising awareness, I feel like the perception of younger people change, and you know, the generations gonna take into account of equal rights. And
How have your experiences learning about different cultures, for example, in Afghanistan, Iran, or even in Japan, how have they helped you like develop new understanding or changes your perspective on yourself as a global citizen, and specifically also about the issue of women?
well, like my personal experience for
Your personal experiences researching or
oh
personal,
yeah. Well,
how have they helped you change as a person, learner, or your actions in the future?
I went to my grandparents' house when I was little, and when in my family, like in our household, I was able to do anything that like. I was able to stand in the kitchen and help my mom cook the food. But when I did that, when I went to my grandparents' house and tried to help my grandma cook dinner, my grandpa didn't have told me to not stand in the kitchen because it's a woman's job. And when I heard that when I was young, I was kind of shocked to hear that, because I personally thought, you know, gender didn't really matter to what you need to do, or like, you know, because you know, because you were a woman, you were destined to do this, wasn't my perception of gender. And so when I heard my grandfather say that, I was a little bit shocked. But I guess having that experience really extended to researching about, gender equality in the future. Now we're looking at the we researched about women in Norway having the right to vote for the first time in 1940. In the 1800s or in the 19th century. And I feel like my personal experience really benefited off of learning about gender equality. And,
Thank you for talking to me about your gender. What you've learned
Thank you.
through your experiences about gender equality, and how that changed you as a global citizen, and what you've learned.
Yes, thank you.